Businesses, two women of color from Colorado have decided to create a website to help give minorities a safe space to share their own personal encounters with discrimination at local businesses. They call it the Modern Digital Green Book.
I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they love you if they need some. If they see you moving solid and your bread's right. I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they love you if they need some. If they see you moving solid and your bread's right.
Pick up the county, put it down for the town. Everyone I keep it.
Did you see our hate mail?
I wanted to ask you
yes,
guys
that's
about that.
exactly. That's what I wanted to get into that as well.
Some people have some questions about our methods.
Where did that idea start? What made you want to do that?
Wait, do you want to wait for this, or we just going?
Let's just go right
We're
in.
just going. This is
all right.
We're right.
So
We're right
on our
about
website we got some hate mail, which was super fun. So there's a difference to me between like trolls and like trolls, right? So the ones we're responding to are like the kind of like the trolls, right? There's actually underlying, I think there might be some good questions, you know? The trolls, I blocked them. There was one that was like, y'all are Nazis. And I was like, wait, what? And I like reported them to Twitter.
Like,
whatever. But the person who the two people that we got the hate mail from, or the hate article, was one of them. If you actually sit and think about it, there were some underlying questions, and yeah, they're not super great at remembering not to use cap locks, and they called some names, but like underneath all the hate and vitriol, like there were some decent questions. So it's really hard to receive that though and like read it, and we're just like, how can this be a bad thing? Like, how is this what? Yeah. And so it's really hard to like hear that people think that we're calling for segregation or like we hate white people. And I'm like, some of my best friends are white. Okay? So what I do to process it is like, I asked Parker, I'm like, hey, can I just go to town on this? And she's like, yes. And then we talk about it before I post it too, because sometimes, like, if you see my draft one, it's not great. But it's really helpful to process the emotions by like doing all that. And then also, I really want people to see that we're getting this. Like, some of my friends like don't believe that I experience racism because I talk like a Valley girl, and I wear certain clothes, being biracial, like I'm not black enough, I'm not white enough. And so people are like, but you act white. And I'm like, what is acting white?
Yeah, what is that?
So I want them to know that I experience racism. And sure enough, people are like so shocked that people can be this hateful towards Parker and my ideas. They're just like, oh, how? And I'm like, that's the thing I need you to realize is like, it's not just that this is a great idea, but there's people who see it and then they're like, we are coming for you.
That's really interesting.
Scary.
That is scary. That's scary and interesting. Just like, it's kind of relates to our podcast and what we kind of want to do going forward with putting that people say racism doesn't exist, and kind of with what we want to do with the podcast is get those different experiences, and kind of with what you're doing with your hate mail, we kind of want to bring on those people with those different views and kind of just those underlying questions that you kind of pointed at in a growth perspective. Like, if I want to really grow, it takes maturity to kind of just sit back and, evaluate that question a little differently and say, okay, how can we get better from here? And the way I think you're doing it with your hate mail is, it's eye-grabbing for sure, and I think it could be, and I think going forward it could have some less lessons learned and some good things can come from it. So that's a really cool aspect.
Yeah, on the one I marked up, like that person, we talked about it for a few days, right, Parker? Where we were just like, do we respond? Don't we respond? What do we respond?
I think we're trying to figure out what to, how to respond. Like our very first piece of hate mail actually came from someone in the Black community. And, we responded to that talking about the intersectionality of the work that we're trying to do. But this was very clearly, the second piece that we got was very clearly from people who did not share the same views probably that we have. And I was like, oh, we're about to be big time. Like, this person, whatever they write is going to go to an audience that is definitely not going to be feeling the work that we're doing. And so how do we respond in a way that is very clear, very concise about certain things so that they don't have, we didn't want to give them fuel for their fire, right?
Exactly.
And so,
yeah.
But by the time we figured out, so the next day we decided to respond, and we'd gone back and forth with a couple of text messages that were like, do we say it this way?
Via email to the person.
Yeah.
And to figure out how to respond to them. And Crystal actually found the article was already up. Like, they asked us for a response, and by the next day they had an article up that was not representative at all of the work that we're doing. And so we sent a response and then decided to kind of address the inaccuracies in the article.
Which
and
you
it was
should.
not restrained.
Yeah.
I bet it wasn't. And I don't blame you at all for that. Let's try to, I want to rewind a little bit with inclusive journeys. I think it's just one of the most, like, I don't want to say unique because there's history to it and the reason why you started it. So kind of take us through the history of the green books and how they were used back then to help people, and kind of how you want to translate it to 2020 and 2021. I'm going forward online. Kind of just, I'll give you the mic and kind of go into this.
Right. Parker, you want me to?
How about you start off with the history and I'll do what the project is going to be.
All right. So for those of you who don't know what the Green Book is, you guys know what the Green Book is, right? You all know?
Sure,
okay.
Yeah.
So basically it was a travel guide. It was green. And also the person who came up with it was named Victor H. Green, which is probably also why it was green. Anyway, so basically in the early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s, the Ford Motor Company and some other motor companies in Detroit started hiring Black people for the first time to work to build cars. And so there was a exodus from the South where, like everyone was like, oh, slavery's over. Everyone has real jobs now. And it's like, that's not how it worked. So for the first time, with jobs starting to open up in places like Detroit and the motor factories, Black Americans finally had an opportunity to make not just like income for food, but now income for more leisure items. They were starting to be able to buy vehicles and cars, and they started having days off and the ability to travel. However, thanks Jim Crow, we all know the legal ability to do something does not necessarily mean, like voting, that you have all the opportunities to do it safely. Like, it's not over, right? So
Absolutely.
The Jim Crow laws were like, Black people can't travel over here, or, this is a sundown town, which is like, if you're Black and you're in that town after dark, you're getting lynched or thrown off a building. Like, that was it. Like, no questions.
Yeah, law goes out the window at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I learned while doing research on the Green Book was that, I should state at this point, the Green Book was a list of safe spaces for Black people to stop on their travels. So one of the things I learned is like, in the South, I thought it was going to be for the South. I was like, the South, it's for the South, right? The North is better. Not a thing. So in the South, the rules, the racism was printed in large font, whites entrance, like, whites only, coloreds only, fountains, pools. Everybody knew what the rules were. But what I didn't realize is that the North, it was just kind of this thing where it seemed better, seemed more idyllic it seemed less racist, but the danger could be worse because they didn't have those signs, right? So you had like the local community knowledge of the rules, the day you were allowed to go to the parks and the days you weren't, the pool you were supposed to go to and the pool you shouldn't. But there were no signs. So people were still experiencing racism, violence, emotional, physical trauma. But if you were traveling and you were new to that town, there were no signs to guide you. Yeah. So you would have the Green Book, which would be like, oh, so I can go to this grocery store, I can stay at this hotel, I can eat at this restaurant. And one of the other things I learned is there were even roads that were racist. Like racist roads? What does that mean? There were all these rules, spoken, unspoken, about how like Black motorists like could not pass white motorists. Specifically, Route 66 was one of those ones that everybody seemed to know about, where if you saw a car coming up behind you and you looked in your rear view mirror and that person was white, you had to pull over. If you didn't, they would figure out a way to stop you and beat you, right? It was like, but so everyone knew Route 66, but what about these other roads with these rules, right? There's no signs out there saying this. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know we had racist roads. Like, this is so the Green Book provided for roads, like, you don't want to stop between this mile marker and this mile marker, fill up with gas, this gas station, and do not stop for even to go to the bathroom until you get to this town. And so it was like life or death. It was such an amazing tool, and it was published between 1936 and 1966, 67, in 64, racism ended with the Civil Rights Act. So they stopped publishing the book. Kind of turned into a situation like the North where like, well, we don't have it anymore, so obviously it's over. But we're in a time, which I'm gonna let Parker take over now, where it's still there. We just don't have the signs.
Yeah, it's just different now.
Yeah. Exactly. We, have gone into a phase where we thought we were post racism, right? People really thought that it was over, things were better, we had our first Black president, and we were past those times. But we are still seeing every day that we still have issues, systemic issues that are woven into the fabric of our society, right? And people are faced with, as a Black woman, sorry, let me start over, because is this distracting? I'm realizing.
Oh yeah, I think it's because like it sees it as a blue screen, but you're fine.
I mean, it looks cool.
Like disappearing.
Oh, hey. There you go.
Maybe we'll just do.
Hair's down now.
Maybe that'll be better.
That's good.
Okay. So yeah, starting over. So, the Green Book stopped being published because we thought that with the advent of laws that were being put in place and the changes that were being made that were historical changes with the civil rights movement, that we were in a kind of post-racism,
yeah.
Right? And we're done with it. And now we've got laws that are going to be in place that are going to stop these things. But really what we saw is it kind of went underground, and now there is no guidebook for it, right? And so as a Black woman, when I walk into establishments, I never know if someone's bias, conscious or unconscious, is going to affect the way that they serve me, right? And so Absolutely. It kind of becomes a crapshoot, and we see it in the headlines for the ones that make it to the headlines, right? So like at the beginning of the year, this year, 2020, a Black man took a check into a bank to cash it. It was a settlement check. They called the police on him because they thought that it was a forgery. And what was really ironic about it is the settlement check was from a workplace discrimination lawsuit. And then he goes to the bank to cash it. He gets discriminated against, right? We have just last month, a woman who was at a hotel, got the police called on her and her kids because they were using the pool, and the hotel management didn't believe that she was a guest at that hotel.
Yeah, right? I saw this one, yeah.
Yeah, so we keep having these incidents still, and even with like the George Floyd murder, right? He was going to a location that he felt was okay, right? He felt was safe, but he got the police called on him, and that ended in his death, right? Because of a bill that he may or may not have even known was forged. And so we have these instances where going into a space where people are not conscious about these things, are not actively thinking about inclusion, are not teaching their employees about bias, conscious or unconscious bias, right, can lead to really awful experiences. And I've been teaching and working with organizations for many years as a trainer, and businesses are always asking me in my DEI training, what is the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Because they think of it as a nice to have. They think of it as a warm fuzzy, right? And for me, I think of it as an absolutely have to have, because we need to be creating these inclusive businesses. But with this project that we're working on, we want to get to a point where businesses are able to see the impact that this has on people, right? And so the project that we're working on, we're calling it right now, it's just a digital green book. The green book was a place that marked safe spaces. We want to give that kind of a spin here in 2020. We've got so many sites where people can go and talk about customer service, right? We've got Yelp, we've got TripAdvisor, where people can mark their experience, their customer service experiences. We want to create a similar site, right? But instead of customer service being at the center of it, inclusivity is going to be at the center of it. So how are businesses being inclusive to the public that they serve? All right. And this can be, you can go on TripAdvisor to find out if your hotel has a pool, right? Or a little bit about the location. Well, on our site, people will be able to go in and see, okay, is this place wheelchair accessible? Right? And if I show up to this restaurant, am I going to be able to get in, or am I going to find out that it's a restaurant that's at garden level, and so it's actually sunk to stairs underground, right? Now I got to turn around and go home. Do they have bathrooms that are inclusive? Are they non-gendered bathrooms, right? So that if I am a person that's trans, I don't have to worry about if when I go to the restroom, or, non-binary, that I'm going to get heckled or someone's going to call me out, right? Yeah. What are the steps? They can see physical things like that, but we also want people to help rate our organizations and our businesses on whether they felt safe there, whether they felt celebrated there, whether they felt like the service toward them was good, And so there will also be that subjective side of it where people will be able, just like you can go on Yelp and say the soup was hot and the service was cold and the service was slow, right?
This was cold.
Sorry, did I say it backwards? The soup was cold and the service was slow.
I caught you.
People can go and even, have those ratings, because we have said already, like that's one of the questions that we get asked a lot, like, is this cancel culture? How are you going to rank businesses on whether they're inclusive or not?
I was wondering that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so subjective, but we already rank businesses on things that are very subjective, and people live and die. Those businesses live and die by that. They go and they respond and, oh, I'm so glad you had a great time, or, oh, I'm so sorry the service was poor, and these are the things we're doing to rectify that, right? We want to provide that kind of space. And just like if you go and you're looking at a restaurant and you see that their rating is, mostly good, like they have mostly good, but there's some, I always go and look at the 1 stars anyway, just to see what people have to say.
Those are some of the best food. Some of the best food is in the 1 stars.
Yeah, like
some of the best food is in the 1 stars.
Like people will, when we look at those, right, you make your own decision based on, okay, this restaurant is a 4.5 and they've got a couple of 1 stars or whatever, but generally they're a good space, right? We feel like it will be the same as people give their opinions and thoughts about situations that have happened to them in certain spaces. We will start to see like rankings of places, and when we see those rankings, we can start to collect data and see trends, right? And so like I might go into a space and have an experience, and maybe it's just because that person was having a bad day and didn't have anything to do with my skin color or my gender. The person who served me just was having a bad day. Well, that will play out in the data, right? If I go and put my experience on this site, but we see that, lots of other people that leave their experience don't have the same experience, that plays out in the data. And that's what makes it so valuable. We want this to be data driven. We want
analytical,
and we want businesses to have access to that data as well. So if they're looking at their rating and they're like, oh, we're not
we need
being
to do
ranked
something
as
about
high, in safety, and why is that? Well, they can look and see, oh, actually people aren't ranking us as high in safety. It is majority women who say that they are unsafe, and they are listing these things for why they feel like they're unsafe. Now there is data, right? Now there are action steps that a business can take, because a lot of times, like I leave a space and I'm not going, if I felt like I was treated not great because of my identity, the only people I'm probably going to tell are my friends, right?
We're not asking for managers.
Right? Right? People like it, the talk about race is so charged. The talk about systems of oppression are so charged that a lot of times people like, I don't want to risk the emotional energy trying to explain to someone
because it's a lot.
Because it's a lot. But now here's a platform where businesses can hear, because a lot of times businesses don't even know that they're not being inclusive to everyone. So here's a platform where they can actually hear and get resources. So we don't want it to be like,
and definitely taking out that element of emotion too out of it, like right away, and like that split second where we see all the time on TV, those videos where people are throwing stuff at the, the whatever it is, you know what I mean? It limits that, and that's important. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we think it could be really powerful. We want it to be about making change in our society, because finally businesses can have the business case, can have data for why this is so important, can have resources for making changes. I can finally look and see, if I'm going to visit a town, did other people of my identity have issues there, or was it a good experience for them, right? Allies can see, oh, are these businesses inclusive to people that don't look like me? So, if a white ally wants to go to a place, they might be treated fine and never know that people from another identity group would not be treated the same. Well, now they can see and they can choose. Like, we are in the age of social buying. People can choose if they want to not buy palm oil or, buy sustainable seafood, right, based on guides. Well, we can shop with our dollar and say that we want to support businesses that are being inclusive and that have this as a part of their business ethic.
And then we know that money talks, and so.
Yeah. So like, anytime I go into a place and there's a Confederate flag, like, I just leave, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to try to convince them, like, hey, your Confederate flag is like super triggering, they're going to be like, that's my heritage, blah, blah, blah. There's no way I'm going to like convince them otherwise in order for them to like take it down. That's not a thing. But if they could have a data-driven economic case, like, hey, here's the amount of business you lost because of that. If you want more money, like, here's a suggestion, maybe lose the Confederate flag and you could be making $40,000 more a year or whatever. Then it takes out like you're offending me, it's my heritage. Well, this is how I feel. You're a snowflake, right? It's like taking all that out. And it's like, I don't even, like, if somebody wants a Confederate flag, like, fine. But like, honestly, economics and data are what makes change, not how I feel, not how you feel, not how they feel. Like, that's on at this point, we're at a point where it's like economics and data. That's
what it has to be. Yeah.
It's real. It's real. You can see it. You can measure it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think this is something. I was just saying, this is something that I think I'm going to use personally a lot when I'm able to, because I just moved across the country with my girlfriend and I. And something that I did a lot before the move was I was in Facebook comments of like people who lived in the town, and I'm asking them questions like, hey, like, straight up, I'm a Black guy, like, how's the racial dynamic at this spot, at this job, at her school? And these are like, this is a space where I could have easily gone to myself and been like, okay, it's safe to live here. They say this is good, great, this is cool. And I think people are going to be engaged in that because people buy. Like, if I see two products and Nick tells me one's good, I'm going to buy it. That's my friend. I see it. I trust that judgment. People trust what other people say. So, like, this is something that I think businesses are going to really, like, rely on and be like, hey, we're down. Look at us this week. Like, we're down. Like, I'm firing you because of this. Like, I think this is something that is going to be really popular among all consumers. And I'm happy to have you both on and kind of share.
What kind of propelled you guys to make this? Like, did either of you have like a specific incident or? I read a little bit what you wrote on the website, but.
Yeah, so I started hunting a few years ago, and
never got into it. I've always wanted to get into it, never got into it.
You should join my Facebook group called Hunters Like You. It's like a different,
I'm on it.
Some hunting spaces are like really kind of scary. And so I made one where we have like an absolute zero tolerance policy where everybody can just be like, I'm a vegan who only hunts for my meat and I always make it with kale. And people will be like, that's awesome, send us the recipe. As opposed to like, get out of here, you crazy liberal, Anyway, so join my Facebook group, Hunters Like You.
I got you.
But anyway, I started hunting a few years ago, and my hunting mentor is a white male who is pretty high up in the national discussions about hunting. Will not name the organization, but he's a respected on a national level for his plans, his strategies for like recruitment and retention of hunters and all that stuff. And he was my hunting mentor, and I was telling him that like I was super glad he was there because he's like this white guy, and he was like, what, why? And I was like, well, I have like a gun and we're like out in the middle of nowhere. And he was like, okay, well, that's like, you're right. And I was like,
it wasn't clicking.
It's so cute. And so I started we had like these like hours and hours of discussion on this. And he was like, basically it boiled down to him saying like, how So you're nervous, you're anxious about going out here. Where's the data to show that that is founded? Like I haven't read, like I read a lot of these reports. How do I know that that's actually founded? Because I don't read a lot of statistics about Black hunters being disproportionately like, you know, having aggressions towards them or getting into altercations. Like I haven't read a study about it. And I was like, okay, so what's that sample size going to look like? Like, are you going to trust me right now? Or do you need like 10 people to have it happen to them? 100, 1,000? What's your sample size for that study?
Exactly.
And that kind of stumped him. And I was like, who's going to do the study? Like, is your organization going to do the study? Like, who's going to fund this study? Who are you going to ask that's going to like be like, this is really worth my time to be involved in this as a Black hunter. Like, I trust you're going to make the changes. Who's going to participate? And he was like, and then he started relying on census data. And I was like, how's the census data collected? Like, who's filling out the census? Like, and so basically he was like, we need data. Otherwise no one is gonna make change at this national level. And so I was like thinking about ideas to get data from people of from Black hunters and stuff. And I was like thinking about that. And then I was like, I would really like some data on some other things, like other public lands. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have like, you know, a list of public lands I could go to that would like be really safe for me to go hunting? And then I was like, you know what? I'd like that for like grocery stores and bakeries, banks and bakeries. And then I was like, wait, somebody already made this. And I like remembered the Green Book and I was like, oh my gosh, what about a Green Book? So it started out with like me thinking, the original Green Book was for Black travelers who were, you know, going to places for outdoor recreation, typically vacations, weekend getaways, all that stuff. So I saw a lot of crossover with like how outdoorsy I am. Like, there's my turkey, I got that. so I saw a lot of crossover with that. And then I called Parker. And then what happened, Parker?
So Crystal called me, and the first time she called me, she's like, I have this idea and I just want to tell somebody. I remember I was coming home one night and I just pulled up into my driveway and it was dark and I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to sit in my car because I've got 3 kids and before I go in. And so Crystal's like, okay, here's my idea. And she lays it all out. And I was like, that is amazing. That is
wait. Time out. So she was quiet for like 30 seconds and I was like, she's going to laugh.
She hates
and then she goes,
she hates my idea.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. I was processing and really thinking I was like, Crystal, this is really, it's gold, right? This is amazing. This is going to change the world. And, you know, then a little while later, a few weeks later, Crystal was like, hey, you remember that idea of mine? Do you want to partner with me on it? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm all in. This is really cool. And I'm so glad that you asked me. And so we kind of, you know, had a brunch meeting where we sat down and talked about the idea and talked about like what it could be and started thinking like it's spun and grew from Crystal's original idea, which was this listing of places, to like, how can we, like have rankings for places, and how do we get it that it is crowdsourced and not us, you know, putting it out there, or us people putting it out there through us, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
People are actually putting the data in, and then like, oh, could we even have it so that organizations and businesses that have really high scores get like a symbol to put on their door.
I'm buying one of those too, by the way. I saw it on the website.
Space, right? And it just grew into this amazing thing. And so, yeah, it is an amazing idea. And I'm glad that we've been able to partner and grow it.
Now the launch is January 2021.
Oh, where did you get that?
That was a guess. My info's wrong. My info's off.
So we have a web team right now, and they have already started construction. We're very excited about that. So we're estimating about a year from now, fall 2021. And
awesome.
we're super excited. But in the meantime, we have been getting flooded with requests for this sticker. Like, we posted what our logo meant, and people were like,
I loved it. I saw it too.
And so we started being like, okay, well, we need to sell a sticker that's slightly different than the one that businesses get, because a lot of people are like asking us, they're like, can I get a sticker for my business? And we're like, no, because we want to have a separation between businesses who self-identify and businesses who have proven it through actions.
Ooh,
so
exactly.
If anybody wants to self-identify as being on board and being inclusive, awesome. Like, I envision, like, I put one on my front door, so that delivery folks can see it, if you wanted a water bottle or pin, a bumper sticker would be great. If an altercation happens in a parking lot and somebody who is being harmed, like, sees your sticker or something, maybe they know you can help and be an active ally instead of a bystander. I see teachers putting this on their classroom doors, right? But that is slightly different than the community identifying a business as being like woke, because there's a lot of people who don't know what they don't know, and that is okay. That is fine. I don't know a lot of stuff that I don't know, right? But we want people to be able to have access to say, like, hey, I'm trying, and I'd be a good person to just like you can generally good. But the business ones are going to be a little bit different. They can't buy them. We're going to send them one when they get like a score.
When the data starts coming in, yeah.
I like that. It's inclusive. I like
Make them earn it. You got to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because how many people have been burned by going into spaces that they were told were safe spaces, right? Or even businesses that really felt like they were being inclusive, and then they've gone into a space and it wasn't, right? Yeah. And so we want to make sure that this is really the community that uses these spaces is going to be the judge about whether or not your space is inclusive or not, right? And we shouldn't feel like it is work that has an endpoint. And I think that's another thing that is scary, but is one of the truest things about this type of work, right? We're always learning, we're always growing. There are so many people in our communities, right? And the work that we do to include them is an ever evolving thing. And so businesses, absolutely, I think, sometimes I work with people who are really looking for the quick. They're like, what is the 1, 2, 3? What are the things that we need to change? And we just want to do that. And they're not understanding that it also takes listening to community. It also takes collaborating with community. And that is a vision for the long term. But it has to be long term if we're going to be really dismantling systems and not just putting a Band-Aid over it.
Absolutely. It's a lifestyle. It's not a movement. It's an everyday lifestyle, and it has to be. Before we let you two go, the one thing we always end on, we give you the mic again, and we kind of just ask you, what's one thing you would want our viewers to kind of walk away with regarding the entire topic of just racial inequality and just police brutality? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but it's a loaded question. But if there's one thing, or 2 or 3 or 4 things you would want the viewers to lastly hear from you to personally, what would that be?
It isn't about a handout, and it's not about, these poor people that are getting hurt that we have to help. This is about changing a system that disadvantages everyone in it, and coming out on the other side as a community that is stronger, a community that is truly connected because we understand one another. And that's what I want to get to. I want to get to that point and that understanding that just because you don't think it's affecting you, it really is. And we would all be better on the other side.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
I got mine. I'm ready. Tied into what Parker said, I'm hoping that people can expand their concepts of what diversity means. So a lot of people are like, why are you only making it for Black people? You know, all that stuff. And I'm like, we're not. That's our identity. Like, Black women is our identity and what we can speak to our experiences of. We're not experts in anything else. So we use those examples a lot, but this is for people like anybody. And we're focusing the criteria on people of any marginalized identity. But when people hear that, they just think like, oh, Black and brown, LGBTQIA+, maybe even people with disabilities or accessibility issues. But like, what about an all-day spa for people who pray 5 times a day? You know, do they have space for that? You know, so it's like, expand your notions of what diversity is. We're not just talking about Black people getting beat or killed by cops. We're talking about all different types of diversity inclusion. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So just like keep working on what that means to you. A lot of the times when we speak, people think we're only doing this work for like BIPOC folks or anything like that. And we talk about the LGBTQIA+ community a lot, but it's really a lot more. And that's one of the reasons as we move forward, we want to hire people from like as diverse backgrounds as possible, because algorithms are only as smart and woke as the people who make them. You know, we're hearing a lot of that about like Facebook and other social media these days. So we want to hire like across the spectrum of human diversity. And even to us, we have so much to learn about what that means. So
there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm learning just growing up, is all the people who I look up to, they always preach never stop learning. So I'm glad you guys came on and taught us.
Yeah, thank you
take
so
the mic,
much.
Nick.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, before you guys go, I just wanted to thank you both so much. I saw the article, it was on ABC News or something, and then I just messaged you, Crystal, and thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for your patience as I stumbled into.
Well, how are you feeling, by by? Like,
I'm fine. I had COVID, just so everyone knows. And
okay.
Nick emailed me like message. He slid into my DM the day before I got it, or something like that, and it was not great. But I'm back to normal. It's fine.
Good. That's good to hear. That's great to hear.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for having us. This is really great. Appreciate it.
Awesome. We appreciate you. Thank you again.
Bye.
I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they love you if they need some. If they see you moving solid and your bread's right. I finally got my head right. I move in silence, you won't catch me in them headlights. And they love to say they